It's gonna be a Merry Grinchmas. Today we're making another cool little stock sign. Literally, this is Christmas season now. Now's the time to stock up on these little kinds of signs that will bring smiles to people's faces. You can make them in your shop in your spare time. Get stocked up on them so that when you go to those craft shows, when you go to those Christmas fairs, you'll have some stock signs that literally are just immediate money and people love them. Today we're using the November 2024 template of the month, and we're using a brand new stencil. This one isn't a stencil of the month. It'll be on the website by the time you see this. This is one that Vicky came up with. You know, Grinch is kind of her favorite thing, so we're using the combination of these two together, throwing some color in there, which is always a great idea to grab attention. So everything is over on the website. Don't forget, Black Friday's coming up. 50% off of everything except for router bits. It'll run through November 28th, which is Thanksgiving, through December 2nd, Cyber Monday. Now is the time to stock up on stuff. This year, base plates are on sale as well. So everything's over on the website. That is our Black Friday sale. Let's get going.
So for this sign, we're using a piece of 6x18 blue pine, and this stuff, you guys, if you haven't tried using blue pine yet, we get it at our Home Depot or Lowe's, and it comes in shiplap or tongue and groove. This is the best carving stuff for just regular stock signs. It looks really nice, it carves great, and it doesn't bleed near as bad as a lot of other pine. Plus, it's pretty cheap. I think for like an 8-foot board, it's 12 bucks. So if you haven't tried this stuff yet, guys, see if it's at your local hardware store, and I highly recommend it. For the Grinch template, we're using the carving liner at 1/8 of an inch deep. Now, a lot of people ask, like, what bits should I start out with? And I always recommend the same three: your profile bit, your 60 degree, and your 90 degree. And that'll do probably 75-80% of all your carving. But with something like this, where there's really fine lines, where there's a lot of sharp points, the carving liner is what I recommend people to buy next. When it comes to fine detail, you just can't beat this bit. This is made by Amana, and you can get it on our website. We have actually used the SC50 before for quite a while, and that's made by Whiteside. The carving liner carves so much better, and I can't explain why, because when you put the two together, they look almost identical, but this just cuts so much better. Now, you want to be careful because it is a fine tip bit, so you can't go any more than 1/8 of an inch deep, otherwise you take the risk of breaking that tip. And you can see, even when there's bigger areas, Dad's actually using the carving liner to take out the bigger areas, and it's not going to hurt nothing. The next bit Dad's using is the profile bit at 3/16 of an inch deep. Now, when you have something like this Grinch template, and it's going to be what we call outset, so it's going to kind of stand out from the board itself, he's going around with the profile bit to give it that outline. But what he's going to do after that is he's actually going to drop it down to 1/4 of an inch deep, and he's going to go around it again just to give it a little bit more of a bolder outline, and also to give him more room when he goes back around it with a 60 degree. So the better you can make that thing pop from the board, which means giving it a wider, thicker outline, the better it'll show up. Now he's going to take that same profile bit at 1/4 of an inch deep, and he's going to go in and do all of these letters. Now this is what we call inset, where you're carving the actual letters into the board. Different people like different things. I think for this particular font and this sign, inset's the way to go, especially because we want to color the letters red. When you do inset, normally we use a 60 degree bit. But this particular font has a lot of sharp points, like at the bottom of the R right here, at the top of the Y. The entire font is very sharp. And this is a font that almost everybody knows, especially if they're into the Grinch, into the Christmas, all that stuff. It's kind of a recognizable font, so if you do it with a 60 degree and you round those points out, I think people are going to notice, and you want it to be as authentic looking as possible, especially if you want people to buy it. For the sharper points, you'll notice that Dad's actually dropping in and he's fading out. So as he gets to a sharp point, he's lifting his router base to where the point of the bit is actually doing most of the carving. That takes a little bit of practice, but you would be surprised how easy this is with just a little bit of time behind the router. I hear people say all the time, oh, I could never do that. If you have the right stuff, the right bits, a good base plate, like ours, it really does not take that long to make yourself a nice looking sign. There's just a few techniques that you want to practice, and lifting out of the board and getting those sharp points is definitely one of them. And the last bit Dad's using on the actual carving of the sign is the 60-degree bit at 3/16 of an inch deep. And this is where he needed that extra room around the template to go in with a 60-degree bit. You want to make sure you give yourself plenty of room, because if you nick the carving of this, you have to kind of fade it in, and it takes a little bit of work to get it to look right. So make sure you give yourself plenty of room. Now he's going in all of the letters and he's taking out anything extra. And you want to be careful with this, because you still want to take all that stuff out, but again, you don't want to mess up any of the straight lines that you got with your profile bit. So make sure that you just go real careful, you go real slow, and you'll be able to get that stuff out without a problem. Now, there's some areas where Dad wasn't able to get the 60-degree bit in there. That's where using a little tool and chipping this stuff out really helps, because once you spray it and sand it, then you have to touch up if you don't get all this stuff out. You want to be able to get a nice clean line and make sure everything inside that carving is below the surface of the board. Coming up with different edges for signs is kind of time consuming. We try a whole bunch of different stuff. Well, this is something Dad came up with, and he just wanted to give it a shot. So he did it on a practice piece and he really liked how it looked. So basically he's using that same 60-degree bit and he's just making little notches all the way across. He's lining them up right next to each other, but because he's doing it all freehand, they're not perfectly symmetrical, which is pretty much what he was going for. This took probably as long as the carving of the actual sign. To do that edge was right around 10 or 15 minutes. And then once all your carving is done, make sure that you brush it out really good with a stiff bristle brush. Now for the back of the sign, he's just going to put a nice little chamfer on it with our 45-degree chamfer bit, and what that does is it gives it a much cleaner finished look, and it also helps with splinters. You don't want to hand someone a sign and they get a splinter. It just kind of looks bad. Now because we're going to do different colors on this, Dad's going to spray everything black that needs to be black, and he's going to make sure to mask everything that's going to be red off first, so there's no overspray. Once you get overspray, it's really hard to fix, and some colors don't cover as well as others, so just make sure you use some masking tape. Make sure you get it flat on the board before you start spraying, because that overspray really does become kind of a pain in the butt. Once the black dried, which only took a couple of minutes, Dad's going to take everything that's going to be red, he's going to take the tape off of that, and he's going to tape everything that's going to be black. Again, especially on the edges, make sure that that tape goes over the edge so you don't get any overspray. If you're going to use colors, make sure that you use a paint that is flat or matte finish. If you use anything else, it's going to bleed really bad and it's going to gum up your sanding discs. To sand this off, we just used an 80 grit disc on our disc sander and then 120 grit on our random orbital. And make sure you blow it off in between those operations, otherwise you can grind some of that colored sawdust back into the pine and it shows up really, really bad. For the green, we're just using a Sharpie and it works really well. It seems kind of chintzy, but if you put the Sharpie on first and then give your sign a really nice clear coat, it works great, especially if it's an interior sign. If it's an exterior sign, you'll probably have to touch it up maybe once a year, once every 14 months, something like that.
All right, guys, there it is. I'm really happy with the way this little thing came out. That edge is brand new. I've never done that before. I just had an idea that I wanted to do something different. So I just played around with it, came up with that, and I think it really is appropriate for this sign. So don't forget, everything that we're using is over on the website, makeawoodsign.com, and we're almost at the Black Friday sale, which runs through November 28th through December 2nd, I believe. So it's 5 days clear through Cyber Monday. Almost everything is 50% off. It's the biggest sale of the year. So don't forget about that, guys. The only thing that really won't be on sale is the router bits. We get questions every year. I'm sorry, we just don't make very much on the router bits. We can't put those on sale, but everything else, virtually everything else, is 50% off. So this is the time of year if you want to stock up on stuff. So thanks again for watching, guys. If you have any questions, please email me, Eric at makeawoodsign.com. We love you. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.